Welcome to the NC Everything Podcast. I'm your host, Curtis, and this is the bi-weekly show where I talk about everything that has anything to do with North Carolina. Whether this is your first time listening or your 100th time listening, thank you all for joining me. Now, I'm recording this episode literally 12 hours before I leave for Myrtle Beach, and I still haven't packed yet, so I got a lot to do. I'm not going to rush through the show, but I do got a whole lot to do. So I'm going to get right into it with the links. If you check the description below, there'll be some links down there. There's a link for the official NC Everything Podcast Facebook group where typically, when I can, I'll post all kinds of North Carolina stuff, content, festivals, and events coming up. If you're listening on a podcast player instead of watching on YouTube, you'll see a link to the YouTube channel where you can put a face with the name. Yeah, I said that right. And there's also a link for Tasting NC, a show I do with my wife, where we taste everything that has anything to do with North Carolina. And then my favorite link is the contact button. You can contact me and let me know what you think of the show, or just say hello at the thenceverythingpodcast at gmail.com, or you can copy and paste the email address in the description below. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the content. I feel like I got a bunch of pages here. It feels heavy. I don't know. I typed up my notes and just hit print. Nello Teer Sr. And I didn't watch a YouTube video myself, so I don't know if I'm pronouncing Lagai right. It probably isn't. But we're just going to call him Nello Teer. N-E-L-L-O. I'm not going to be spelling this episode. That's that. Anyway, Nello Teer, it says he was born in rural Orange County in 1888. I really couldn't find where, but another source said he was born in Durham County. Now, here's the thing. Durham County was formed from part of Orange County in 1881, which had been 7 years before Nello was born. So what I would probably bet is that Nello was born in Durham County in a part that was formerly Orange County, if that makes sense. But yeah, I really couldn't figure out exactly where he was born. And if you know, I looked and looked. If you know where the Nello Teer home place is, I would love to know too. Anyway, 1889, a year after he's born, his family moves to Durham proper. His father partnered with a guy named A.A. Holder, and they owned and operated a brickyard. And then in 1907, Nello Teer's dad and A.A. Holder became road construction contractors. And one of their first big projects was the road between Chapel Hill and Durham. Now, as far as Nello goes, he attended school up to the third grade, and then he quit to go work for his dad. At age 7, he started working in the brickyard. And it says he started working in the brickyard. I'm not sure if he was receiving a paycheck or how that worked. I mean, in practice, I've been working since I was probably 7 or 8 years old. Legally, I've been working since I was 14 years old. So anyway, it wasn't long after he started working at age 7 in the brickyard that he was involved in some sort of accident. He ended up losing his right hand, which seemed like it would be incredibly traumatic for a 7-year-old. But it seems like he dug in and overcome, and at the right old age of 11, he takes over the equipment and it says he takes over the equipment part of his father's business. So at that time in 1909, if you had called up the Nello Teer, or if you'd called up the road contracting company, you would have spoke to an 11-year-old about equipment. Anyway, once he got some responsibility, this really got him thinking about starting his own business. And so he did. I had a note in here when he started his own business. The math didn't add up right because it seemed like he started it when he was like 6 years old. I think the information was incorrect, and I couldn't find the information that I felt that was correct. But at some point, young Nello Teer did start his own business. And one of his early projects were pouring the foundations for some of the early homes in Durham County. Some of the names I have listed here is Benjamin N. Duke and Clinton W. Toms. I didn't look those guys up. I meant to, but I'm assuming they're prominent figures in Durham. When they were working on the University of North Carolina, Nello Teer's company helped haul limestone to the location or to the job site. And one of his first really big payout contracts was grading the Haynes Athletic Field at Trinity College, now known as Duke University. And I covered that on one episode. I don't remember which one now. But I talk all about Trinity College and Duke University. Well, after he'd done all this good work for Duke University, he kind of got to be friends with the Duke family. And so Since they owned the Durham and Southern Railway, they put Nello Teer to work kind of fixing up the railroad. And this is when he really started working on roads and bridges all around Orange, Granville, and Person County. Later it says he was working in Rockingham County. Finally, he built him a headquarters, it says 4 miles north of Durham, on a 92-acre, I don't know if you'd even call that a lot, on a 92-acre farm. He built his headquarters where he kept his equipment and his maintenance shops, but he also kept his favorite horses there and a large herd of cows. So he called it his headquarters, I guess, but it sounded like it was a farm. Later it said he bought 50 acres somewhere in Durham. I don't know if it was connected to this lot, but he buys 50 acres where he built his family home. And I actually stumbled across a picture of the Nello Teer house in my research and completely forgot to look at where it was or find the location. Again, if you know where the Nello Teer the family home is, feel free to let me know. And that was 1920 when he built the family home. In 1921, the Federal Highway Act came out, and that was pretty much, in short, improving the highway system around North Carolina. And if you're in the highway contracting business or road contracting business, that's music to your ears. And it was music to Nello Teer's ears. And they went to work right away. At one point, he had 147 highway miles under construction all at one time. Eventually, the Nello Teer Company would build 12,000 miles of roads all around the United States. And something I come across in 1924, apparently Yanceyville, North Carolina, hosted a Pan-American Highway Commission, which I guess that was, they had like a big barbecue festival in Yanceyville for the Pan-American Highway Commission. Apparently Nello Teer was the host of this commission in 1924, and 7,000 people showed up for it. And most of these guys were from foreign countries. And that alludes to the future. He ends up doing a lot of work in Africa and abroad. But I don't know if you've ever been to Yanceyville. I have. I've been to a lot smaller towns like Spivey's Corner. But Yanceyville, it is a small place. I can't imagine 7,000 people, mostly foreigners, showing up in North Carolina and heading to Yanceyville. And I'm not picking on Yanceyville. It just seems like an unlikely location for something like this, especially considering that he had a home in Durham. I said that weird. Durham. I'm not losing my mind out here. If you're listening on a podcast player instead of watching on YouTube, I'm outside in my orchard, and it's not as hot today as it normally it has been for the past 2 or 3 weeks, but it is kind of stuffy out here with the humidity. Anyway, now that he's worked on all these highways and the brand new Duke University and became friends with the Duke family, he also got a contract working on the Washington Duke Hotel, which at that time was Durham's tallest building. And it was also in the early 20s that he started working on this little arena in Chapel Hill on the campus called the Kenan Stadium. And, most of you, I hope a lot of you know what Kenan Stadium is. That's, home of the Tar Heels. I've been up there several times. I've not watched a football game up there, but I've been up to the stadium for 4th of July celebrations and other stuff. And I don't know. It's one of my favorite stadiums, I guess you could say, but I'm a baseball guy. I like baseball stadiums more than football stadiums. But another thing to keep in mind, that during this whole time, he only worked with mules. He didn't have tractors. It said at one time he owned 400 mules. He wanted to rectify this, so he started mechanizing his operation. And it says that he became one of the first Southern contractors to have a completely mechanical operation. Now, Nello Teer had a few kids along the way, but one notable child is Nello Teer Jr. It was in the 1930s that Nello Teer Jr. enrolls in the School of Engineering at UNC Chapel Hill. He was probably going to school or going to class in buildings that his daddy helped build. Anyway, he finishes school, and in 1935, Nello Teer Jr. joins the Nello Teer Company with his father. Now, World War II didn't slow him down. He started working all over Kentucky, Virginia, Tennessee, and Florida during World War II, working on, obviously, missile sites. And then after World War II, he got to work on the Blue Ridge Parkway. He would end up building 180 miles of the Blue Ridge Parkway, which includes the first and last section. And yes, I'm going through what he built pretty quick, but the thing is, he built everything. He had his hand in everything. They say King Midas, whatever he touched turned to gold. I think with Nello Teer, whatever he touched brought him gold. He made money wherever he stepped, and you're going to see that when I start talking about some of the other things he opened up and got into. So anyway, I don't remember if I just mentioned it or not, but he worked at a military base at a Marine base at Cherry Point, which I also covered on the show. And again, like always, I don't remember which episode, but I did talk about Cherry Point. And during my Cherry Point, I didn't read anything about Nello Teer. I covered the Blue Ridge Parkway. I didn't read anything about Nello Teer. I'm not sure how I missed that. I didn't read about Nello Teer when I covered UNC or Duke. I guess Nello Teer should be a co-producer of this show. He built most of the stuff I talk about. But anyway, outside of Cherry Point, around that same time, he also worked at Camp Butner, the Beaufort Marine Air Base, and an air station in Edenton. And do you remember I was talking about all the foreigners coming to that big barbecue in Yanceyville? I would have loved to have been there. That would have been so much fun. Well, I don't know if it was because of that, but he ended up picking up contracts in Iceland, Guatemala, Nicaragua, Panama, and Central America. And at this time, I said he had business in Africa. Not sure if he had that business yet, but he ended up doing a lot of stuff in Africa. And I say he, I mean, his company worked on these projects abroad. I'm not sure if Nello Teer himself did a lot of work there. I'm sure he probably visited because that's what you do with your business, but I'm not sure if he himself done a whole lot of work or it was all contracted or subcontracted through his company. Well, in 1952, Nello Teer finally retired as president of the Nello Teer Company. That would have been a year before my daddy was born. But even though he retired, the company, they still thrived. But this is when they started buying other businesses. In 1954, they bought the Durham and Southern Railway. That's not the first time I struggled saying railway. 1954, they buy the Durham and Southern Railway. Now, it says that at that time, the railway was still using steam engines. So, of course, they immediately started buying diesel-electric locomotives. In 1955, they opened up a headquarters in Central America in Guatemala to launch Nello Teer International. That same year, they opened up they start a dredging division and got to work in Florida and Virginia. And dredging, most people know what dredging is, but you'll see them out there in like the sounds and stuff, getting up all that silt and opening up the waterways. So now they've been doing military bases and bridges and Blue Ridge Parkway, and they're working abroad, and now they're doing dredging too. So, you see what I mean about, everything he touched brought him gold, or turned to gold, I guess. I'm not going to name this episode King Midas, by the way, but he was, the company, and I mean, he was still living at this time. He found plenty of ways to make money for himself and for his company. Now, I said he was still alive at this time. He did pass away in 1963 at age 75. He died in Watts Hospital in Durham from injuries from an automobile accident. I didn't find many details on this automobile accident, but he was interred in the family mausoleum in New Maplewood Cemetery. And again, I'm not sure exactly where that's at. But life goes on, and so did the Nello Teer Company. In 65, 2 years after his death, the building division was launched. And they were already building buildings, I think, or at least doing foundation work for buildings. So I'm not sure exactly what the building division did. But 3 years after that, in 1968, they opened up an office in Africa in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. And a year later, in 1969, they signed an agreement with the Triangle Service Center Incorporated, which is a Research Triangle Park developer for the Research Triangle Foundation. I didn't look that up, obviously. But I did cover the Research Triangle Park. Don't remember which episode, but it's out there. And again, I didn't read anything about Nello Teer when I was covering RTP. And this next part confused me. It said that in 1972, they launched Teer Enterprises Limited, and they started construction of 200 park offices and 300 park offices. I thought these were quantities. I'm thinking these are locations in Research Triangle Park. So they worked on 200 park and 300 park. And then, after 2 years after the RTP business, in 1974, they get into the coal mining business. But they weren't digging mines like into the ground. They were doing surface mining. And then it wasn't long after that, I didn't get a date on it, but they started a concrete paving division. And one of their first contracts with that was paving of the Colonial Highway, which it says Williamsburg, Virginia. I know that's the Colonial Highway. I thought that the Colonial Highway went from Williamsburg to Yorktown to somewhere else, like a triangle. Maybe I'm thinking of something else, but I think I have been on part of the Colonial Highway. I did read about a spree of murders on the Colonial Highway, which I won't cover because that's Virginia. And, check out a Virginia Everything podcast for that. Y'all know how I feel about Virginia. Anyway, it wasn't long after the quarry or the concrete division opened up that they started a quarry division. And they opened the Crabtree Quarry in Raleigh. I'm going to struggle with that word, quarry. They opened the Crabtree Quarry in Raleigh, as well as a quarry in Durham, Holly Springs, New Bern, Princeton, Rocky Mount, and Rougemont. So they had quarries all over. In 1980, they started construction on 400 park offices in RTP, I'm assuming. And they did work on expanding Governor's Inn to a 203-room building. And I'm sorry I struggle with that. I don't spend a whole lot of time in RTP. I've heard of the Governor's Inn, but I have no idea where it's located or what that building is all about. But anyway, 2 years later, in 1982, they began work on 500, 600, 700, and 800 park offices, which included the IBM complex. And I don't remember how to get to the IBM building now. I'm not even sure if it's still open. But I do remember when I was a kid and my dad would drive us through RTP. He would point out the IBM building almost every single time. And if I'm sure I've talked about my dad a lot on the show. He was a truck driver, so he delivered, he was a local truck driver for years. And he delivered to so many businesses in North Carolina, but he talked a lot about delivering to so many places into RTP. I mean, hell, he may have been to all of them. I don't know. Well, in 1985, the Teer Enterprises was sold. Now, keep in mind, I just seen the note here. Yeah, the Nello Teer Company merged with Coper's Company in 1980. But this merge did not include Teer Enterprises because it was a separate entity. So Nello Teer Company merged. In 1985, Teer Enterprises was sold. It doesn't say to who it was sold to, but when it was sold, the company name changed to Teer Associates. And I'm not sure, with the paving and the concrete and all their different business ventures, I'm not sure what all went into Teer Associates. But anyway, here I am at the end of the episode. I wanted to wrap up by running down. In my notes, I found a list of projects they worked on, and it was a list of projects they worked on all over the United States. I limited the list to just stuff they worked on in North Carolina. Most of them I mentioned, but I want to finish with a recap. They worked on 17 sections of the Blue Ridge Parkway, Cherry Point Marine Base, Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, Jordan Lake Dam, which that wasn't in my original notes, but Jordan Lake Dam, Forsyth County Hospital in Charlotte, Roanoke Rapids Dam, Duke University Chapel Excavation, and Duke Chapel is also pretty awesome. I don't think I've ever been in there, but the building is beautiful. The Blue Cross Blue Shield building in Chapel Hill, I actually pass by that all the time. It's a very, very odd looking building. I won't have it ready by the time I put this episode together, but I'll snap a picture of it and throw it on the Facebook page. Moving on, Regal Paper Plant. I'm not sure what it said. It just says North Carolina. Keenan Stadium, Duke University Medical Center, Governor's Inn and RTP, Burroughs Welcome Headquarters in Durham, Wake County Courthouse, Raleigh-Durham Airport. And once again, I covered aviation in North Carolina, which included Raleigh-Durham Airport. Nello Teer's name never came up in that research. Also in that episode is the Winston-Salem Airport, which, again, did not include Nello Teer. I feel like I dropped the ball somewhere if his name never came up in all these episodes that I covered. That's really all I got. I do have a note in here that I grew up with some Teers, and I did. I grew up playing with them. They were my neighbors, and it was part of the same Teer family. They were descendants of the Teers, not the rich side of it. So instead of wiping our ass with $50 bills, me and my two Teer neighbors, we were hunting and fishing and raising hell around my community. And my wife's family, her ancestors actually married one of the Teers. And we tried to figure it out. Matt, if you're listening, I know y'all had texted about it late into the night. It seems like the family, my wife's family, who they married was either the brother or nephew of Nello Teer. And that may have been Junior. It may not even been Senior. But anyway, same family and not the rich side of them. And that's kind of a cool fact. But, everybody who listens to this show knows I'm from Orange County. And depending on which story you read, Nello Teer was also from Orange County. So, there's not a billion people in this county, especially in the 1800s. So it's not too far-fetched that I'm kin or associated to Nello Teer in one way or another. And, I mean, I think Nello, one of the Teers, married a Thompson, and that's my grandmother's maiden name. So, I mean, I think we're tied up with the Teers in some way or other. But that's all I got. Thank you all again for listening. I sure appreciate it. I got a message today from a listener, and I didn't write her name down. She messaged me about a month ago, and I just now seen it because my phone is a dummy. But she just wrote in and said she liked the show. And, I don't feel like I do a great job, so I really do like hearing that I'm doing a good job. I don't have a lot of confidence. I don't feel like I do anyway. But I love hearing from you, even if you don't have an episode idea. I like hearing that you're listening. And like I said, I appreciate that more than any of you will ever know. So now I think I'm sweating through my shirt. I got to go in and pack my bags and get ready for Myrtle Beach. My whole family's packed up. I'm the only one left. And so you'll be watching this. I think you'll be watching this episode after I'm back from the beach. But I hope I have a good time. I'm sure I will. I know people have strong opinions about Myrtle Beach, but my opinion, I've so far, knock on wood, I've never had a bad time at Myrtle Beach. But anyway, by the time you're listening to this, I hope you all had a safe and happy 4th of July holiday. And I guess I'll talk to you in a couple weeks.